Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Cologne podcast. My name's Mike.
How do you follow that up? My name's Ryan, and we're two best friends going on a fragrance journey and giving you our uneducated opinion on it.
That's right. You know what we have for him today, Ryan?
Oh, I know, but you can go ahead and tell them.
It's an expose.
Do it for me.
Okay. It's an expose on Chris from Frag-Mental.
Mm-hmm.
He's been keeping a secret, and we've uncovered it.
Yeah, it took about an hour.
Yeah.
But we finally broke him down. We had him under the heat lamp, sweating.
Yep.
And his knees started wobbling.
And he finally admitted to it. You're going to find that out because he's been white-knuckling this secret, holding on to it, using it to his advantage. And that comes at the end of the episode. But first, we talk about
his work on YouTube, how his fragrance journey started. We talk a little bit about his podcast, The Scent Geeks, with Steve from Everyman Fragrance.
Yes.
Then we also talk about sampling, decanting, and we talk about a couple of things in the fragrance community.
Yeah, we cover the whole gamut, but the most important thing is that we hold him down, we pour water on his face till he gives up this secret that has made him more successful than anybody wearing fragrances out there.
We waterboarded him, huh? Is that what we did?
We do what it takes. Expose Chris from Frag-Mental. Let's get into the show.
Hey, Chris, how's it going? Nice to meet you for the first time.
My dudes, wow, I'm on the Cologne podcast. I thought my podcasting days were over. Yeah.
You guys were the first fragrance podcast we actually found because when we first initially started, we thought, this isn't a thing. Nobody does this. We're the first. We're getting into new territory, you know? And then we're like, oh, no, never mind. There's other people out there doing it.
Well, we were doing great until you fuckers came in and copied our idea and then made us quit because you did it so much better. Exactly. Yeah.
No.
We'd still be going if it weren't for you.
Yeah, I want to just say real quick, too, you know, when we first got into this journey of, we've always smelled fragrances our entire life, like every typical man on earth, you know, and we rocked everything. But when we first got into this journey and we were watching a lot of YouTubers then, Ross was one of them. We told him a couple days ago, but for sure, you were one of them, too. And it's like you were a regular to us. So it is kind of surreal, kind of fanboying out for a minute here to have you here. Because I do respect the hell out of your grind and everything you've done. And it's been fun. Honestly, even kind of watching your stuff grow just recently. I know you've kind of been cheeky for a while, but I really feel like you've taken the gloves off probably the past 6 months the most. And you've been really kind of unfiltered and fun. And I've enjoyed your content. Big time.
Oh, Ryan, thank you, mate. That's really nice of you to say. Thanks. Yeah,
I've enjoyed it more than he has, though.
All right, boys. You know what? I think to sort of turn the tables for me, it was the hate video that I did with George and Corey, Killer Frags. And I just had this idea, this little seed in my head about what I could film with those guys. And I thought, let's be this sort of TV, BBC presenter kind of guy. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of Alan Partridge, but he's sort of this bumbling presenter, does everything with conviction, but isn't always right. What he says, you know, he gets his words mixed up. And so that was, you know, a bit of an inspiration and a few other bits of British TV, actually. But I sort of incorporated that into that hate video and it went down really well. And I thought, you know what, this might be my little thing, my little angle that I can do something unique because it involves one of my biggest passions in life, which is acting. And it's something that I can do and maybe most other fragrance YouTubers can't do. So why not lean into that? And with all these girls coming in and taking a lot of the views with you know, what women think about fragrances, and great, you know, that's where it's gone, that's where YouTube's gone, and that's where the views are at the moment. I thought, well, what can I do that isn't just endless lists to try and keep my views going on? What can I do that is me, that no one else can do, that is unique to me? Is maybe the content that people didn't know they needed, but they like it. That's sort of the angle I'm going with it. So that means a lot, Ryan, because it's so nice to get the feedback, because when you try a new idea, you're just going out there, you're going out on a limb, you don't know if it's going to work. It could easily just fall flat and fail. And I think it maybe took 2 or 3 videos where I was playing playing that character for people to sort of get it. I would say things wrong and get sentences the wrong way around on purpose. And even now, even today, I get people commenting on that video saying, that's not the way you don't say it that way. You say it wrong. I'm like, oh man, I don't even bother replying saying that was intentional. I just leave it there. So it is a risk, but I'm enjoying it, and it's a fun thing to do. It takes quite a lot of effort, more than just my sit-down videos here in the studio, so I do have to have the time to plan those. They're the most satisfying ones of recent times for me. So I'm glad you're digging them, man. Thank you.
No problem.
I think you do a good balance of having both, though, because you also release the content that is more the sit-down, the more relaxed, but we're going to talk about this fragrant or a particular list of fragrances that you're liking for this thing or that thing. So it's balanced really well.
They're sort of the bread and butter videos for the views. You've got to sort of have those. I don't want to call them filler, because I do put a lot of effort into those still, and do all my research and write my scripts and still try to inject some sort of Chris humor in there where I'm not that character. But I couldn't do every video as that character, because I'd be like Corey, I'd be doing one video every 6 months.
Yeah.
So I have to sort of, when the idea comes to me, I'll do those, and maybe it's a nice little treat for people if they're not every week anyway. And then for the rest of the time, I kind of just got to plow on and go through my usual style of content here in the studio.
How long have you been doing YouTube?
November 2017, I started.
Wow, okay.
Quite a bit now.
Yeah, so what's that, 17?
That's like
about, what, 6 years? 6 or so years? Yeah, and it's, gosh, I all my videos are still up there, but I look back at the early ones and wow, I am tempted to take some of them down, honestly. Some of them are proper shit. But it's nice to have them up there to see the journey, to see the progression and the change.
Character development, we call it.
Yeah. Do you remember one that like really just, it did something and you noticed it and you're like, man, I'm going somewhere with this early on?
The first one that really sort of, I don't know if viral is the right word, but it was viral for me because I was looking at the view count and it was going and the comments were coming through and people were sharing the video, was one that I had my daughters in. It was the first one. It was a bit of a trick because they weren't in the thumbnail. I think the thumbnail was girls rate, popular fragrances or whatever, and put lots of girly little pink flowers and artwork on there just to try and get people to click. And then it was just my two little girls when they were quite a bit younger than they are now, and it hadn't been done. People hadn't got their kids on a fragrance YouTube review video. It was tempting to, after that, try and recreate that formula and get them in every video, but obviously that wasn't going to be possible to do. Couldn't recreate that, so I did it. I've not been in one for a while, but I did a few where they made another appearance, and I love those videos because now, we started a few years ago, I look back at those initial ones and they're so much younger. So they're a little document of how they were, the ages that they were when we did the videos, and, their ages change on the various ones that they've done with me. So personally, for me, it's a really lovely thing to have there, and they're online and they're always going to be there. And maybe when I'm long gone and my daughters are still around, they can click on that Frag-Mental YouTube channel and say to their grandkids, hey, look, we did this with our dad when we were younger, and look how little we are, and the relationship they had with our dad. And I'm getting a little bit emotional thinking about it, to be honest, but it's a nice little document to have. But yeah, Ryan, to answer your question, that was the first one that went on a really steep upwards trajectory. And then after that point, I think people found me and discovered me, and then every now and then I would have a video that just did really well. And then of course things changed with Aaron Terence Hughes. Aaron had got in touch with me, and no one knew him, and he said, look, I've got these new fragrances, I'll send all of them to you. I was like, whoa, I don't need a box of 10 fragrances. Honestly, I felt a little uncomfortable with that. And he said, right, I'll send you the sample set. So he did, and I thought, some of these are really good. And then he said, can I come to York and film a video with you about my fragrances? So he did. I thought, well, if he's going to put all the effort in and come to York, I'll do it. So filmed this video about Aaron's fragrances, and that video it was okay, didn't get amazing views. But whilst I had him, I was about to go to Scent Explorer in New York 2019. So I need a little bit of content in the bank to tide me over for whilst I was away and couldn't film. So I said to Aaron, do you mind doing another video? And it was, it turned out to be Perfumer Rates Cheapies. And that went live whilst I was in New York. And I think I'd done a video with Jeremy in New York, and I released it. And I was like, uploaded it. I was going, right, okay, here we go. Let's watch the views on this Jeremy video go up. The Jeremy video got released, and then straight after, I think the Aaron video got released, and the Jeremy video did nothing, and the Aaron video just went I have never seen it. That is the fastest, most viewed video in such a short space of time. And in my mind, at the time of filming, it was, I've just got to get this guy that no one knows to make a little bit of filler content for whilst I'm away. And that totally changed the trajectory of my channel, because Aaron's now become a regular guest. I've collaborated with him. He's been as good for my channel as I was in the early days for his business, for creating exposure. So there's really lovely thing going on where we've both helped each other to achieve things. But yeah, that first Aaron video, man, I couldn't believe it. I thought YouTube had broken. I was watching it going, this is not no, this isn't right. No one knows this guy. Why is everyone clicking on this video? But of course, it was Aaron and his personality, and he's got that very unique personality, a little bit divisive at times, and it just did the business. So I've got a lot to thank Aaron for, actually.
Yeah, we've got to thank Aaron for Onyx, because that was one of the ones you were also wearing in Italy that the second time you wore it, we were just giving you compliments about how great you smelled. It was such a strong, great fragrance. And then the next day you wore it, you were just like, sorry, guys, I had to wear it again.
Yeah.
Y'all are screwed.
I rocked it again. I was like, oh, in my mind, I got a shitload of compliments yesterday. I'm going to wear that fucker again. More compliments. Come on. Have you smelled Onyx, Ryan? Have you smelled that one?
I have not smelled it yet, but he has literally bragged about it almost every day since then.
I wanted to ask, which version was that? Because he's got two, right?
That was the original.
Okay.
The very first, before he even brought the matte black bottles out. It was the one in the clear bottle with the shitty stuck-on white label. It was a good one.
I think in the future, we're going to try to get our hands on that, probably do an episode on that, because, that was one of the fragrances that I came back talking about the most, was that you've got to smell this Onyx, Ryan, because I really think it's right in line with what you like.
Yeah, that's
so
what you're
I
saying.
Came back talking about that.
You smelled Tom Ford's Noir de Noir?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so you got that sort of rose and chocolate and patchouli thing going on in that fragrance. To me, Onyx and Onyx Extreme are like Noir de Noir on steroids.
Wow.
It's like sort of that type of DNA, but more concentrated and more amplified, and then Aaron's little twist on it. But I'd love you guys to do that. I'd love an episode to listen to you, maybe compare the Onyx with Onyx Extreme and get your opinions on both of those to see if you feel like there's a difference.
Yeah, I would love to do that. And you describing it being similar to like Noir de Noir. Yeah, He's worn that before, and I love that fragrance. So if it's something like that, but louder, I'd be in love with that thing. I'm pretty sure.
It's definitely louder.
So to segue, I came back talking about that, but then I also came back going, Ryan, you wouldn't believe how much Chris wears Molecule 01. I was like, this guy loves Molecule 01.
I do love Molecule 01. It's an interesting thing, and I guess we're going to get into this now, because this is what the whole bloody episode's supposed to be about, isn't it? Not my career in YouTube. But it is a fragrance that I love the reactions I get from other people when I wear it.
Yeah.
More so than from my own enjoyment of wearing it. But I've had some, probably more so than any other fragrance, some really fantastic feedback on wearing Molecule 01. So that is why I'm on my second bottle now. I'm halfway through my second bottle, and I listened to this very podcast recently, and I think, Mike, you were saying that as soon as that's down, you'll be getting another one. It's always a fragrance that you will have on your shelf, and I'm there with you, man. I'm on that same page. I always want Molecule 01 on my shelf.
I noticed, at least in Milan, I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about you just because I spent a little bit of time around you, but
he pretends all the time.
I'm like,
what's my favorite flavor of ice cream?
I think you got chocolate.
Oh man, that's right. You do know me. Oh, we're best buddies. You know my favorite flavor of ice cream.
You got to eat your whole cone of ice cream. I didn't over there.
Of course. You didn't get to eat all your ice cream, but the laughs it provided us with, me and Tony, wow. It was the most juvenile little schoolboyish moment I think I've had in a long time.
Yeah, it was perfect.
I loved it.
It was great. Yeah, so this is either my second or third bottle of this, and I'm about a third of the way down, and then that's my backup to it. I felt like at least on the trip, and you may not do this most of the time, but at least on the trip, you were layering a lot with Molecule 01. Is that what you typically do, or do you find that you wear this by itself as well?
Yeah, I should do it more, but I often forget. I'm often wearing a fragrance because I'm preparing to review it. And obviously, when I'm in that situation, I can't then layer it with Molecule because it doesn't give me an accurate representation implementation of the fragrance. But when I have the rare occasion when I can choose my own fragrance, I can decide what I want to wear. I'm always going Molecule 01 underneath it now these days. Almost like I'd put moisturizer on my face after a shower every time. And now when I apply a fragrance, when it's my choice what I'm wearing, I'm going Molecule 01, either on its own or layered underneath something else. And because I took it with me to Milan, I thought I'll take it with me because in my experience, it improves the performance of any fragrance that you layer it with. And I thought, we could be out for long days there in Milan, so I will bring 01 with me to try and make my fragrance last throughout these long days. And I really feel that it does make a difference. When you put that underneath a fragrance, it injects it with extra intensity, projection. It makes it more noticeable. But this is the magical thing about 01 is that it doesn't make it more noticeable in an obnoxious, intrusive way. It makes it more noticeable in this magical, sparkly way that people just love. And I don't know why. It's one single synthetic molecule. I don't know what it is about this ISO-E Super that does that. It's alchemy to me. But I love it. I don't even need to question it. I don't even need to know the science. I just need to know what it does for me.
I'm going to spray it on right now.
I was about to say, you just did a hard sell on this thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to go wild with it.
Oh, look, Ryan's going everywhere. Wow, what's that, 30 sprays?
Oh, yeah.
It's not his bottle, so he's happily
it's free.
Spraying.
Free juice.
Yeah.
It is a badass scent.
What are you getting from it, Ryan? You've just sprayed all that all over you right now. What are you smelling?
It's so subtle, but it really is like cedar shaving to me. That's what it kind of reminds me of. Just a little bit brighter. That's kind of what I get. And it's almost like cold, like how I can describe it. But man, it's such a great fragrance. And anytime Mike's ever worn it, it is loud. It's not, but it is. It travels.
It took a couple wearings for us to even be able to smell it.
Yeah.
I remember the first time it came in, we bought a 5 ml decant of it and we sprayed it. We couldn't smell anything.
Mm-mm.
And then I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to wear it. I wore it a couple of times, still couldn't smell it. And then one day it just like unlocked for me. And I was like, wow, I can really smell this. And now it's really loud.
It, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be real with you and honest here with you guys. I don't get a lot from it when I wear Molecule 01 on its own. If I go close up to my skin, I get a little bit of woody muskiness. I don't really get the pencil shavings thing. I think, did Steve say he got a little bit of that when he wore it, but as well as Ryan? It's so faint on me. It's such a subtle fragrance that it may as well not be a fragrance. And I do wear this on its own because I think you said this recently in a podcast, Mike, that sometimes you want to go out, maybe it's to the gym, or you just be in a situation where you don't really want to smell of perfume, but you want to smell good.
Yeah.
And that's when you wear Molecule 01, I think, on its own, is that when you don't want to smell particularly fragrant, yeah, you just know that this magical formula is a really nice smell. And maybe it works different with different people. I don't know. But it's sort of a little bit like blind faith. Like, I'll put this on and I'm not particularly smelling anything, but I know, and I've had experiences where people have told me they love what I'm wearing. And up until that point, I thought, what? This Molecule 01, it's like the Emperor's New Clothes. Everyone's going on about it. Everyone's going how good it is. But there's just absolutely nothing there. Maybe it boosts other fragrances when layered, but on its own, this thing is doing nothing. And then I went to have my hair cut with my regular hairdresser, Emma, and I just wore Molecule 01 on its own. She was cutting my hair, so she was quite close quarters. By far, the best reaction I've ever had from her on a fragrance. She said it smelt amazing. She absolutely loved it. And I had this moment where I was like, oh, it does work.
Yeah.
I do get it. And I've heard stories where the shop I bought my first bottle from in Lisbon in Portugal, the guy in the shop said to me that when his partner wore it, he could smell him from the opposite side of the room. He knew he'd walked in wearing Molecule 01. So it works, but it's this tricksy little fragrance that some noses get something from and some noses don't.
Right.
So I don't know what your guy, I know you love it, Mike. So do you smell a lot from this fragrance when you wear it?
I don't as much as other people. And I think maybe Steve was saying it's one that honestly reacts to skin chemistry. It's one of the fragrances that actually shows the biggest difference maybe in the way it smells based on just it hitting the skin. Because I agree, like if I wear it on my clothing, I don't get as much reaction from the people around me as I do when it hits my skin. And maybe that's because it travels a little bit further or something that way. You know, it heats up, it does something differently. But yeah, for me, I'll wear it. And if I come into the studio, Ryan is like, you're wearing Molecule 01 today. Like he can smell it as soon as I hit the door.
It is surprisingly loud. Like even right now, like I could smell it when we first spray it, but I don't really smell it that much. But yeah, when we've been somewhere, even when we've been out and he'll be on like the next aisle at a grocery store, I can smell it. Like it's that loud to me. But again, it's not choking though.
So that's something I've not had. And that's a definite advantage that you two guys have, both being in this hobby together, is that you can, and this is so important, to smell a fragrance on somebody else is a completely different experience to wearing it yourself, to get in their sillage, to see what projection is like. And I've never experienced anyone wearing, not to my knowledge anyway, wearing Molecule 01. I've always only just worn it on my own. So if I came and hung out in Texas with you guys and maybe come and got some of those double noodles with you,
come on,
at the famous Chinese place, then maybe I would go, oh, that's Molecule 01. That's what it smells like to smell on other people. Up until this point, I've not had that. So my best experiences personally, for my enjoyment, is the effect it has on other fragrances when layering it.
I need to do that more.
Smelling on somebody else is a totally different experience. So much so, I think we can all agree, in the community, a lot of people kind of talk shit on Aventus not lasting long, right? This guy has worn it quite often now. We've learned that it really does last a while. I'll smell it. It's loud and it lasts forever on this cat.
I think
Aventus is almost quite famous for people going anosmic to it in waves, so it'll come and go, which is a really interesting thing. I'd love to know what it is about Aventus that causes that. But yeah, that's a common thing, isn't it? That people think that, I lose it, but then they get it back.
Yeah, our opinion on it has completely changed now. Like I would go, yeah, it's worth the price. It's really good.
Well, I think just in general, like you were saying, most people don't have somebody that, they have people around them that will smell their fragrances, but they're not into fragrances to where they're constantly like getting a litmus reading on whether or not the fragrance is doing good. But either one of us, if we know what the other person is wearing, if we notice it throughout the day, we'll go, wow, we're 5 hours into this work day and that Aventus is really loud, So we do have the benefit, and we've learned quite a bit of just like, yes, you do get nose blind to certain things. And it's easy to say, oh, this fragrance doesn't last that long if it's just your opinion. But we've been kind of blessed to have each other to know that like the other person's going, dude, I smell it like crazy. Because I wore Greenly by Parfum de Marly, and Ryan went on and on about how loud that fragrance was. And I was like, it doesn't seem very loud to me.
Man, it was crazy loud. When you smell it, it's really kind of low key. But man, it just took over the room. It was incredible. And it's one of our favorite scents.
I love me some Parfums de Marly. So
That's right,
Greenly and Sedley and Percival actually are on my to buy list, because Parfum de Marly. Actually, I've got Galloway, which is a fresher one. I think they do fresh scents as well as they do the heavier, richer scents. So yeah, I've got to pick those up at some point. Waiting for a little cheeky discount on a site, and then I'll pull the trigger on those.
Yeah,
but it's so good, and it's so useful for you guys to be able to have that second opinion. Bless Steve, my old colleague. Every time he says, oh, I asked my wife what she thought of this, and she fucking hated it. Like everything he gets his wife to smell, she's like, no, wash it off.
Anything with any complexity at all, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
If anything that's not fresh and clean is not. To be fair, my wife's quite similar actually. She's so not into fragrances that it's hard to even get any opinion on whether she likes it or not. And that's why I don't mention it too much in videos, but I'll put a fragrance on and I think, wow, this is the next thing. This is the big thing. This is going to be a hype machine. And I'll put it on my hand and I'll ask her to smell it and she'll go, yeah, it's all right. Yeah, it's good. It's okay. I can't hype a fragrance up in a video with that sort of reaction. Can you please get a little bit more emotional with it? But some people just can't. We're used to smelling stuff, so we can get excited by smells, and some people can't because they're just not used to smelling it and picking out the nuances. And that's not a flaw in them. That's just because they're not used to doing it.
Yeah, we appreciate fragrances, so we're decoding it and trying to process every little nuance of the fragrance. And most people are just like, smells good, smells bad,
Yeah, that's true.
It's funny sometimes, too, we get really heated. You wouldn't think we would, but we get really argumentative about certain fragrances or fragrance houses. I'm not going to say some, but the other day
He's talking about yesterday. Me and him
yesterday,
got into it.
Man, I'm just like, why can't I have my opinion about this fucking house, man? And he thinks I'm like, I hate it for just whatever reason, but I really don't. And I haven't vibed with anything from it. And so he's just constantly grilling me about it.
I feel like he comes into certain situations with like he has a bias already before he even smells it. So I'm like, I can already see before he even sprays it, he has like this try to impress me, I dare you look on his face, and then he sprays it. And then he's just like, I knew it, I wouldn't like it. Okay, when you approach it that way.
But it can be quite hard to take, just naturally as human beings. It's hard to take if someone doesn't hold the same opinion as you.
For sure,
and particularly with fragrances that we love. Maybe we love them because we've got emotional connections, and then there's passion involved as well. So to hear someone slate or trash a fragrance that is so personal to you is really like, you can find yourself getting angered by it, but then you've just got to go, no, hang on a minute. Some people, will obviously in YouTube comments, they'll write that in the comments. But I was listening to you guys talk about Duro Nasamato recently, and
that's right.
I had to stop myself from shouting at my phone whilst I was listening to the podcast. Because I love that fragrance.
Really?
I wore it. Yeah, I wore it the other day, and you guys really didn't get it, did you? You didn't like it. It didn't do anything for you.
Well, to be fair, we've been talking about this because we revisited Must Ravager by Frederick Malle. We had an old episode that never went out, but we did not like it at all. And then we smelled it because we had a listener, and I think their name is Mike as well. Mike C. They had Frederick Malle send us like 3 or 4 decants, and that was one of them. I was like, oh, we smelled this one before, so I'm going to spray it again because it's been about a year. And I sprayed it, and we were blown away how fucking good it smelled.
And we both loved it. Yeah. Our minds were completely changed. So, I think certain things you can't wrap your head around it the first time you smell it, or you're like trying to process it and you can't process it.
No.
Or again,
I'm busting your balls a little bit because Duro is a divisive fragrance, and that opening is pretty wild.
Yeah, for sure.
It does have that medicinal nature, and you're not the first people to talk about that. It does soften down really nicely. It becomes an easier wear in the dry down, but I love the opening. I love how impactful it is. If you want to make a statement about something, then Duro is definitely one to go for.
Are you a person that likes to predominantly wear really loud shit? Like, do you like being noticed that way? No,
not all the time. Sometimes like I said, I'll put Molecular One on if I just want to be a bit more subtle. Give me a Prada L'Homme, love it. No, I'm not always in the mood for being loud, but when I am, I'm like, well, let's just do this thing properly. If we're going loud, let's go loud. Like layering Molecular One underneath Aaron Terrence Hughes Onyx Extreme. That is some serious firepower. And that's why everyone in Essence couldn't smell a thing other than me on the days that I was in there.
We were all fueled by jealousy that evening.
But interestingly, actually, just on the subject of Duro, I wore, just because I knew we were doing this podcast, I thought, I've got O2 as well, which is the unboxing, but I've got 05, a 10 mil of it, and that is Cashmeran. And I sprayed it on, and I thought, whoa, this smells like the opening of Duro. Like, massively. If you get a chance to smell the Molecule 05, then do so, because Cashmeran must be in Duro. It must be. It's sort of this very intense, dry woodiness, almost medicinal. So I thought, that was interesting. So if you didn't really appreciate the opening of Duro, I wondered how you would feel about Molecule 05. So maybe that's a future episode for you guys.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, we've really enjoyed, and we've got more that we need to post that we've done, but we've enjoyed just taking single notes vetiver, tonka bean, sandalwood, whatever, and just smelling those by themselves, I think it has helped us really pick certain things out of certain fragrances. First one we did was oak moss, and we were like, this smells nothing like I thought it would. We were searching for something that we didn't know what it smelled like, so it's hard to understand when a fragrance has oak moss, where it's like you expect it to smell, let's say, mossy, which we're East Texas, we've got tons of moss and greens and stuff like that. You're expecting one thing, and then when you smell it by yourself, you go, wow, okay, that was quite a bit different than I thought.
Okay, yeah, I've not smelled it on its own, actually, and I would have expected exactly what you described, but if you don't get that, that's interesting.
It was kind of floral and kind of sweet smelling, and it was really interesting. So I love the idea of just having isolated fragrant molecules like that, because I think that does kind of open our mind up a little bit when we smell them by themselves. Kind of helps.
And I think you mentioned something in a recent episode, and you were saying that when you smell a fragrance that is, say, particularly heavy in vetiver, it's built around vetiver, and then you'll smell another fragrance that reminds you of that vetiver fragrance, then you'll go, oh, this must have vetiver in, it's that same kind of woody, smoky vetiver. And you get to cross-reference then. You use cross-referencing from fragrances that you've smelled to then help to decode new fragrances.
That's kind of how we've been learning. We keep saying that we've got this uneducated opinion, that's like kind of our motto, but in a way we're trying to still learn and figure things out from the fragrances to appreciate it more from an artistic perspective, because we know there's a lot of work put in. And sometimes I think about how we used to judge fragrances just based on this is good or this is shitty. We don't like this, so it's a bad fragrance. And now I was telling Ryan, we smelled this newer one by Diptyque, and it's not in line with anything I would ever wear, but I loved the fragrance. I thought it was such a smart fragrance, such an interesting fragrance. And whoever it works for, they'd be getting a great fragrance out of it. And I think for the first time, just in the journey of this podcast, I'm finally getting to that point where I can appreciate something that's not for me whatsoever and go, this is still an amazing fragrance. And I hope somebody finds it that it works for, because I think they'll get a hell of a deal on something,
Yeah. So coming back round to Molecule 01, I thought it was interesting. I did a video recently with the two Curlies, with Curly Scents and Curly Fragrance, and they had two quite different reactions to this. So Andrea was really excited about this fragrance on its own. She was saying when a guy wears Molecule 01 on its own, she's going weak at the knees. She loves that. But then Michelle was saying that she loves Molecule 01, but the effect it has when layered. Not so much when it's on its own. So her thoughts about it more aligned with my own, that she didn't get a great deal personally from it when wearing it on its own, but when layered with other things, it really just allowed other fragrances to be amplified and to bloom even more than when they're on their own. So two different opinions, and that again just goes to show that this fragrance 01 is divisive in terms of who gets what from it. Some people get all sorts of different things from it. But I love that about it. I love that you can't predict what person is going to get from this fragrance. Everyone's getting different things.
Right. I love that about it as well, because it's also like the people who do smell it and react to it, it's like kind of a bonus for me, because I do know that some people out there can't smell it at all. So when somebody does, I'm like, hey, you're part of an elite group that can actually smell this fragrance,
You're in the ISOE Super Club.
Yes. Has there been a fragrance that along this path, the last 6 years, that has really opened your mind up in the journey that's just kind of stuck out and went like, oh, I remember the time I smelled that, and that was a new horizon for me as a person who really loves fragrances?
Yeah, I think it was more so in the earlier years when I was discovering new things and these, wild and wonderful, crazy smells. I remember having a particular moment with Tom Ford's Oud Wood. The first time I smelled that, I was in duty free in Portugal, and I sprayed it on my skin, and I just thought, wow, I didn't know a fragrance could smell this way, because up until that point, I'd pretty much just smelled designer fragrances. Lamal, Cool Water had been big fragrances of mine over the years, and this Oud Wood was something different. It was not necessarily more powerful, but just more rounded and smoother, and it just felt more natural. It just smelled better quality to me. So I remember being pretty blown away with that, and then that led me to other Tom Fords, and I was even more blown away with Tuscan leather. I thought, wow, who would ever have thought of mixing fruit with leather?
Right.
And combining those things in a fragrance. But the contrasts of those two things just excite synapses in my brain, and definitely had an experience with that. Carlisle was another one. Big one for me was Enigma. That's one of the first niche fragrances I smelt. The first niche fragrance I bought full retail, actually. I had bought Aventus partial before that, but I remember smelling Enigma, and it was as if that fragrance, as I smelled it, this is going to sound really lame, but as I smelled this fragrance, it sort of pulled me into the bottle, and it was almost like I was just swimming in this amazing smell, and there was no end. It was like a bottomless smell. You know, some fragrances you can sort of smell where it ends, you can smell the base layer or whatever. Well, with Enigma, it was the first one that it just seemed to go on and on into this sort of dreamy place with that rich cognac and the vanilla and the benzoin and the tobacco. So that was a real and that's probably why I say Enigma is my favourite, because I had such a crazy sort of experience with it the first time I smelled it. It was like nothing I'd ever smelled before. If I was to smell Enigma for the first time tomorrow, I might not have the same emotional reaction because I'm smelling it at a different stage
for sure
in my fragrance discovery. But at that time, and that's the whole thing about fragrances, isn't it? It's about where you smell it, when you smell it, what's going on in your life at the time you smell it, who you're with. It is all so personal. And that's why some people have ridiculously, crazily positive reactions to certain fragrances, and other people are just like, nah, it's not doing anything for me. It's very personal.
Was that the Parfum or the Parfum Cologne?
It was the Parfum. It was before the Parfum Cologne had been released.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I have the Parfum Cologne, and I have kind of the similar experience. When I first smelled it, I was just like, wow. That one and the Parfum version of Elysium, I've never smelled. To me personally, we've done 220 plus episodes now. In my journey, I have not smelled anything that smells as good as Elysium to me. That is my favorite scent. There's just something about that fragrance, man.
I think
that's probably tied into when you smelled it, the time you smelled it,
100%.
And what you'd smelled prior to that. So
yeah, we had gotten a decant of that and Creation E, that's what they
Enigma.
And Scandal, which the first time we smelled Scandal, we had never smelt anything that we call it kind of like skank, kind of on top. And I can remember taking the decant of the package, and I just got this whiff, and I literally turned because I was like, fuck, this shit is crazy.
Yeah.
And I love that one too. There's just something about that. I love that fragrance.
It took me a while to warm up to that one because I was like, who on earth would make a fragrance have this note in it to where like whenever I smell it, I go, kind of like makes your nose coil up a little bit.
So was that the Parfum Cologne version of Scandal or the Parfum version?
That one was the Parfum Cologne.
Because that's interesting. I don't get anything particularly sort of stanky with Scandal. It's sort of smells to me like a vintage type of men's aromatic fougere, that type of smell, like sort of Eau Sauvage Parfum type of territory. I don't really get anything, animalic, or it's got clackers for sure.
It definitely does have that, yes.
Clackersville, Texas. But
I think at the time,
not stanky.
At the time, it was just so much more than we had smelled before.
Yeah.
It was so early in the process too. I think now if we smelled Elysium, it'd be the same way, that we'd be like, well, this is nice. But at that time, it was like a version of grapefruit that we had never smelled. In fact, we didn't even know it was grapefruit. Somebody had said, oh yeah, grapefruit in that. And then I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. But for a long time, we were like, what is this? We thought it smelled like cucumber water. Like there's this like interesting, clear bitterness to it that we couldn't put our finger on. And it was so intriguing that we were like, wow, this is a good one. This is exciting, And
sure, yeah. I always think Elysium sparkles. I just think it's a fragrance that is best described as it sparkles with the fruit, with the florals. It just all comes together in that Roger trademark way where it's all so smoothly blended, and it's just got this little bit of magic, and it just it sparkles. Beautiful.
Yeah, we love it. I've gone back and forth because some days I get great performance out of it, and then some days I haven't, and I've just cried about it. So the parfum is a little bit on the pricier side to wear for a light citrus fragrance, you know.
I only have the Parfum Cologne, and I don't think I've even ever worn the parfum, but I would love to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's not one I have.
Well, it's even more expensive when you're buying it 10 mil decants at a time because you're paying more per mil. But I would spring for, 7.5 mil, sometimes the 10 mil from, like re-decanter type site. And I'd love to wear it, and but it would be one that I would baby because it's on the pricier side. For us, that's $100 USD for a 10 mil decant. That's a lot.
No.
Yeah, it's steep, isn't it?
Yeah.
Steep. Hey, we do crazy things in this hobby. Like, I spent £245 on my first bottle of Enigma. It was the EDP, which is now discontinued. And at the time I did that, I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I spending this much money on a fragrance? I've got a problem here. And now I'm buying like 3 fragrances a week. I'm just like going in the store going, yeah, that's one video, that's another video. Put them in the shopping cart, get them in. And, it's just like crazy how much money I've spent. I've been fortunate enough to receive some free bottles, quite a lot of free bottles over the years, but I've spent a lot of money on fragrances as well, a crazy amount. But I'd like to think that I make more money back on the content that I use those fragrances to produce. So it's just one of those business investments.
We'll get there. Until that point, it's decants and samples, and it works for us, though. There's something less appealing visually about going, and today we're looking at, this fragrance, but on audio-wise, it's not as bad. But we still have a few people call us out for doing decant sampling instead of just having a big, juicy bottle of it.
No, I think the only reason you would have a big juicy bottle really is to be able to show your viewers what the presentation looks like on camera. Sure. So I think for you guys, samples and decants, absolutely. It's a great way to do it. I just did a video recently. I was distraught about this. I had to do a video on the new Spice Bomb infrared EDP.
Oh, yeah.
With samples.
Carded samples. I saw that.
Carded samples. Yeah. Because the one I'd ordered from France hadn't come in time for when I'd planned to get this content out. And, you get the more views, the earlier you get it out. I said to Helen one morning this week, I said, I'm going to have to go and buy a bottle in town of infrared, even though I've got one coming in the mail because I want to do this video. So after the gym, I went to the store and I was going to buy it, and they didn't have it in. Just as I was walking away, the lady said, but some samples of it came in this morning. I was like, give them me. Give me the samples. I'll take the samples. So I walked out with 2 samples, and that was the perfect scenario because my bottle turned up yesterday, actually, but I managed to still do the video just off the samples without having to buy a second bottle.
And classic Frag-Mental, you said you would try layering them.
I did. Today, you know what? I wore triple layer today. I wore this little baby. Yeah, Molecular 1 with Spice Bomb Infrared EDT and Spice Bomb Infrared EDP.
Wow.
And I went to do a voiceover today in a city nearby to me in Leeds, and I gotta say, I was smelling pretty damn good. I went on a train, and I was, the whole carriage of that train was smelling of infrared, Spice Bomb infrared, and I was proud of it. I was proud. It was a good day, good fragrance day.
Well, that's a good place to end on that. True to his nature, I told you, Ryan, I know everything about Chris, and one of the things is that he's always layering Molecule 01. So.
It's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? I mean, even if it doesn't do anything, then no harm done. But the chances are it's going to be doing a lot. People are going to be loving the smell of Molecule 01. They're going to be loving the amplification that it gives the fragrance that you're layering it with. And let's be honest, it's a pretty affordable fragrance. We've not talked about that.
Yes.
For a fragrance that has such a magical effect. In the UK, we're looking at about, I think, £70 for, maybe it's not quite 100ml, maybe it's a 75ml, but it's pretty damn affordable considering it's a niche fragrance.
Yeah, in the US, these 100ml bottles are $50.
What? Or maybe mine is 100 ml. It looks like the same size as yours, but so it's cheaper in the US then.
Yes.
No way.
Now this is a sample bottle. I think it's maybe $70 for like a actual presentation, but the tester bottle, and all of them say sample really, really big on them. But I got a couple of bottles that way. I don't mind.
Yeah, who cares? Because sample bottles don't come with a cap, but no molecule fragrances come with a cap. So
that's true.
Hey, why not? Yeah. So really, really affordable, and that's great. That's testament to Eccentric Molecules that they keep their fragrances affordable. That's quite a refreshing thing, actually, in the niche fragrance world.
For sure, yeah. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It means the world to us. I know our listeners really love your content as much as we do, so it is such a joy to have you on, and we're very thankful.
Thanks for having me. As a thank you, I've sent a bottle of Duro in the mail to you guys both to enjoy.
Perfect.
So, we can get some second opinions on Duro.
There we go. And until next time, spray it up, y'all.
Spray it up, y'all.